It's strange how you remember the smallest things before everything collapses. For me, it was the candle. That stupid vanilla-scented candle she lit every Thursday night like clockwork. Flickered weirdly right before she opened her mouth, like even the flame sensed what was coming. Her name's Mara, my wife of 10 years. 10 long, winding, sometimes beautiful, mostly exhausting years. We met in grad school, both majoring in educational psychology. She always said I had the softest soul of anyone she knew. She used to mean it as a compliment. Later, she used it as an insult. I'm Elliot, by the way. 41, a middle school counselor, the kind of guy who sends just checking in emails, who leaves notes in lunch boxes, who refills the ice cube trays without being asked. Mara used to say I was predictable in a safe way, then she started calling it boring. Then that Thursday, while we were eating takeout at the kitchen island, and I was telling her about one of my students who wrote an essay about time travel and grief, she cut me off mid-sentence, put her chopsticks down, tilted her head like she was trying to be gentle, and said, "I'm done with this." No argument, no context, just that, like she was quitting a yoga class. I blinked. She expected me to cry. Maybe she thought I'd try to convince her to stay, but all I could do was nod. I stood up, took a sip of my water, and said quietly, "Good. I'm free." And something in her eyes shifted. It's not guilt, not regret, annoyance. She didn't hug me, didn't cry, just grabbed her purse, adjusted her jacket, and left me with cold noodles and a flame still dancing like nothing happened. That night, I slept in the guest room, not because she asked, but because I couldn't take the silence and hours. The sheets smelled like her lavender spray. I didn't sleep. The morning I packed a suitcase, grabbed the memory box she never knew about from under the bed, and left. No screaming, no letters, no dramatic speeches. I moved into a short-term rental downtown, a gray, slightly crooked apartment with paint peeling by the windowsill and a view of the dumpster. It suited my mood. I didn't tell anyone except my sister Lainey, not my coworkers, not our friends. I just vanished from that chapter quietly. I watched her online, though. She didn't make it hard. 1 week later, she posted a picture at a wine bar with someone tagged Greg Whitmore. Divorced, taught history at the same university where she worked, the caption said. New beginnings. 2 weeks after that, she blocked me. But by then, I had started making changes. See, I wasn't interested in revenge. I was interested in rediscovery. And 1 month later, she came knocking literally on the door of my new place. I was standing in the kitchen plating dinner, and when she stepped into my living room and saw who was sitting at my table, her expression crumbled like dust. But I'm getting ahead of myself because before that moment came, I had to go through something worse than betrayal. I had to face myself. The apartment was small, old, and a little sad. It's kind of like I felt most days, but it gave me something I hadn't had in years. Silence. No one talking over me. No one dismissing my thoughts mid-sentence. No passive-aggressive sighs from the other room. It's just the steady hum of a fridge and the occasional creak from pipes older than I was. I sat on the floor a lot those first few days. No furniture yet. It's just me, 2 duffel bags, and a foldable mattress I got from a thrift store. I ate ramen and peanut butter sandwiches, drank too much coffee, and watched the ceiling like it owed. Me answers, "You'd think I'd be angry or broken, but I wasn't. Not really. I was confused more than anything. Not about her leaving, I'd felt that coming for months, but about how numb I felt after it actually happened. I kept replaying her words. I'm done with this. That wasn't the voice of a woman overwhelmed or heartbroken. It was the voice of someone who had already moved on. Like the relationship had expired, and she'd just forgotten to toss it out. Part of me wondered how long it had been over for her. A year? 2? Had she already mentally packed her bags while I was still buying candles and folding our laundry into little perfect rectangles? One morning, a few days after moving in, I went digging through the memory box I brought with me. Photos, receipts from our trip to Vermont, the first birthday card she ever gave me, back when she still called me her strange little lighthouse. There was a photo I couldn't stop staring at, us sitting on a picnic blanket, her in a sundress. Barefoot, laughing about something I can't even remember anymore. I didn't cry. I just sat there with that photo in my lap, wondering if she ever really felt it, or if I'd made it all bigger in my mind. Later that week, my sister Lainey dropped by unannounced, holding a bag of groceries and looking at me like I was some fragile glass that might tip over if she exhaled too hard. "Have you eaten anything green this week?" she asked. "No," I said, "but I've had 6 yogurts." She didn't laugh. She just unpacked spinach and eggs and things that didn't come in crinkly wrappers. Then she asked, "Are you going to tell anyone else?" I shook my head. "Not yet." She raised her eyebrows but didn't argue. I wasn't hiding it. I just didn't want the flood that would come after. The advice, the whispers, the pity, especially from people who used to say things like, "Mara's such a catch," or "You're lucky she puts up with your quietness." It's funny how people say that, like being gentle is something women have to put up with. That night, I went for a walk through a bookstore downtown that stayed open late. I wasn't looking for anything, just trying to fill the hours. I wandered into the non-fiction section, and there she was. Not Mara, someone else. A woman with dark curls, glasses, and the kind of tired eyes you only get from real life, not filters. She was reading the back of a memoir, and we both reached for the same book at the same time. It was awkward, then oddly warm. We talked for 20 minutes, standing right there under fluorescent lights. Her name was Rowan. She taught writing workshops for kids recovering from trauma. I told her I was a school counselor. She smiled in this quiet, knowing way, like we were part of the same exhausted tribe. Didn't exchange numbers, just a maybe. "I'll see you here again." I did, 2 nights later. Then again the next week. Soon, coffee turned into dinners. Conversations turned into connection. And all the while, I kept wondering if it was too soon, if it was fair to Rowan, if I was ready. But she never asked me to be more than I was. And for once someone actually listened when I spoke, not to respond, just to understand. I didn't plan on her becoming important, but she did. And 1 month after Mara said, "I'm done with this," she suddenly showed up at my new door. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging. She looked curious, like she expected to walk into an empty space and find me shriveled up, still waiting for her. But what she found sitting at my dinner table, sipping tea and laughing at one of my terrible jokes, was someone she had never seen before. And Rowan turned her head, looked Mara in the eye, and said the one sentence that shifted everything. The look on Mara's face was one I had never seen before. Not in a decade of birthdays, holidays, or shared silences. It wasn't shock. It wasn't even anger. It was something closer to disbelief, like someone had taken the script out of her hands and rewritten the ending without asking. She stood in the doorway, her designer coat still buttoned up, one gloved hand gripping the handle of her tote bag. Like she wasn't sure whether to drop it or run with it. Rowan, calm and composed, stood up from the table. She didn't look threatened, didn't bristle or shrink back. Instead, she placed her mug down gently and offered a smile that was somehow both kind and firm. "You must be Mara," she said. "I've heard a lot of nothing about you." I felt the air shift. Like the temperature in the room dropped 3 degrees. Mara blinked fast, caught off guard by the poise Rowan carried with such quiet certainty. Rowan wasn't trying to be cruel. It wasn't her style. She just had this way of letting people know with just a few words that she was rooted, that she didn't need to raise her voice to be heard. I cleared my throat and walked over. "Mara, what are you doing here?" "I was in the neighborhood," she said, her eyes darting around the room as if trying to find some version of me she recognized. "I thought I'd check in. You didn't text? You blocked me." "Fair point. I didn't expect." She trailed off, glancing at Rowan. "Company." "Well," Rowan said, taking her seat again, "I didn't expect to be here either. But life's funny like that." Mara didn't laugh. She finally took a step inside, carefully scanning my new space like a detective at a crime scene. She noticed the books on the shelf, the second pair of boots by the door, the framed photo of me and Rowan at the edge of a lake. I could almost see her connecting the dots, trying to timeline the moment when I stopped waiting for her. "What do you want, Mara?" I asked, not unkindly. She hesitated. "I just wanted to talk. Alone, if that's okay." Rowan stood up, but I stopped. Her. "No. If you've got something to say, you can say it here. There's no more secrets. No more side doors. Mara's lips parted like she was about to protest, but something in my tone made her stop. She sat. It felt surreal. The three of us sitting there, my past and my present, on opposite ends of a table that had only ever known peace until now. She started slowly, cautiously. "I didn't expect you to move on so fast." "You moved on before you left," I replied. She flinched. "That's not fair." "What's not fair?" Rowan said gently. "Showing up unannounced to a man you walked out on and acting surprised he didn't pause his life for you." I don't think anyone had ever spoken to Mara like that. She was used to controlling the emotional weather in every room. But Rowan didn't bend to her storm. Mara's voice cracked. "I made a mistake." I raised an eyebrow. "With Greg?" Her eyes went wide. "How did you—" "You weren't subtle," I said. "Instagram doesn't lie. You blocked me a week after you posted a wine bar photo with him." Mara looked down at the table. It wasn't what I thought it would be. That's not my problem anymore. Silence fell over the room. Not hostile, just final. She looked at me, eyes glistening now. "Do you really not miss me at all?" And I did something I hadn't done in a long, long time. I told the truth. I don't miss being overlooked. I don't miss being someone you tolerated instead of loved. I don't miss feeling like an inconvenience in my own home. I took a breath, but I miss who you were, who we were. I just don't know if that was ever real or something I built to survive. Mara nodded slowly, and for the first time since she walked in, she looked small. Not manipulative, not calculating, just lost. She stood. "I should go." I didn't stop her. She turned to Rowan. "Take care of him." Rowan held her gaze. "He doesn't need taking care of. He just needed space to exist." Mara left without another word. The door closed, and I felt not triumphant, not smug, just clean, like some invisible thread had finally snapped free. Rowan walked over and slid her hand into mine. "That," she whispered, "was chapter 1 finally ending." She was right. But I had no idea what chapter 2 would bring. Not yet. After Mara walked out of my new place, the silence she left behind felt different from the silence I used to live with. It wasn't heavy or suffocating. It didn't feel like waiting. It felt deserved, like the air had real weight again, and I could finally breathe in something honest. Rowan didn't say much that evening. She didn't need to. She understood that sometimes the loudest things were the ones unsaid. She just sat with me, her thumb gently brushing the back of my hand while the stew on the stove continued simmering. We never did finish dinner that night. Couldn't eat. My chest felt too tight, like the closure I had been avoiding for weeks had finally arrived. Knocked on my door and demanded to be witnessed. The next day I woke up early. My mind buzzed with everything I didn't get to say and everything I was glad I didn't. Kept thinking about the way Mara had looked at Rowan. There was something buried deep in that glance. It's like envy she hadn't even unpacked yet. Maybe she didn't come to fight. Maybe she came to confirm something she already feared, that I had truly moved on. I went for a walk through the park near my apartment. It was cloudy, cold, but the kind of cold that made your skin feel awake. The park was mostly empty, except for a jogger with a golden retriever and an older couple slow walking in matching windbreakers. It was peaceful. It was mine. I stopped at a bench and just sat there, remembering the first time I had ever seen Mara cry. It was years ago, in our 3rd year of marriage, when her mom had a minor heart scare. She had collapsed into my arms, completely unguarded, and I had felt important, needed. But somewhere along the line, that need dried up. And all that was left was her resentment that I still needed her. Back at the apartment, Rowan had already left for work. She'd scribbled a note and stuck it to the fridge, "Left you the last slice of quiche. I swear, if you forget to eat it, I'm hiding your socks." It made me smile. I sat at the kitchen table and looked around at the artwork we'd picked together from the flea market. The coffee mug she insisted on collecting, the crooked picture frame we never fixed because we found the tilt charming. It all felt real, built, from scratch, not from routine or shared history, but from choice. Later that evening, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. At first I let it go to voicemail, but the second call came through within a minute, and something told me to pick up. It was Greg. Yeah, that Greg. His voice was stiff, uncomfortable. He introduced himself like we hadn't known each other vaguely through campus events and faculty dinners. Then he paused. "Listen, I know this is weird, but I think you should know something," he said. I leaned back in my chair. "What's that?" "She told me you were emotionally manipulative, said you never supported her dreams, that you were clingy." I just wanted to say, I don't know if any of that was true, but it didn't line up with the guy I met. I blinked. "You're calling me to tell me my wife lied about me." He hesitated. "I'm calling to tell you I think she lies to herself more than anyone else." It was quiet for a second. I heard the sound of traffic behind him, like he was pacing. "Near a road? She's not with me anymore," he said. "Let me guess," I replied. "She told you she needed to figure herself out?" He laughed, but it wasn't warm. Something like that. We ended the call on a strange note. Not enemies, but not allies either. Just two men who had been orbiting the same storm and gotten tossed out in different directions. That night, Rowan came over with a pie she baked herself and a bottle of red wine that neither of us could pronounce. We didn't talk about Mara. We didn't need to. She saw the slight tension in my shoulders and simply pulled me close, letting my head rest against her shoulder as we watched some documentary neither of us finished. Before she left, she looked at me and said, "I like the way you stay soft, even when the world tries to harden you." I hadn't realized until that moment just how much I needed to hear that. Not because it was flattering, but because it was true. And as I closed the door behind her, I realized something strange. I didn't feel broken anymore. I didn't feel betrayed or lost or unsure. I felt ready, but life wasn't done surprising me. Because just a few days later, I got an envelope in the mail from a return address I hadn't seen in over 5 years. And what I found inside was the last piece of the story. I didn't know I was still missing. I don't usually check my mailbox every day. So what I get is junk. Ads for pizza deals I won't use. Bills I've already paid online. Political flyers with awkward Photoshop smiles. But that morning I was restless. The kind of restless where even the smallest task feels like an accomplishment. The envelope stood out immediately. Not because it was fancy, it was plain white, a little bent at the corners, but because it was handwritten. No typed label, no stamp, just my name, Elliot Darner, in slightly slanted, narrow letters. The return address was barely legible, scrolled with what looked like a fading ballpoint pen. I carried it inside and just stared at it for a while. It didn't make sense. Nobody wrote to me, not in years, not like this. When I finally opened it, the paper inside was folded 3 times. No note, no explanation, just a photograph and a single printed page. The photo hit me first. It was Mara, but not the Mara I knew. Not the carefully styled, polished, professional Mara with her power blazers and sleek ponytail. This was her. A dimly lit room, eyes red, hair messy, hunched over what looked like a hotel table with a man I didn't recognize. Definitely not Greg. They weren't touching, not explicitly, but the way she leaned into him, the intimacy was undeniable. It was recent, too. Her necklace, the one she bought just a few months before leaving me, was clearly visible. The top on the back was from 2 weeks before she told me she was done. My stomach turned. Not from jealousy, not even anger. It was something deeper than both. Confirmation. The page that came with the photo was typed. Short, cold. Deserve to see the truth. There's more if you want it. You were never the problem. No name, no contact info, just that. I sat back in my chair, holding the paper in one hand and the photo in the other, trying to process the 1,000 directions my mind was pulling me in. Who sent this? Greg?
Oh.
His voice on the phone had sounded too shell-shocked for that. One of Mara's old friends, someone trying to settle a score. The strange part, I didn't want more. I already knew who Mara had become. And now, with this picture, I also knew who she had been, even while she was still in our home, still sitting across from me at dinner, still kissing me goodnight. I tossed the envelope into a drawer and left it there, unsure if I'd ever take the sender up on their offer. That night, I told Rohan about it. She didn't ask to see the photo, didn't demand details. She just listened, her steady fingers curled lightly around her teacup. What are you going to do with it? A moment, nothing, I said. It doesn't change what I already knew. It just confirms it. She nodded. Closure rarely looks like what we expect, huh? I exhaled. I thought closure would feel more satisfying, but it just feels... quiet. That's how you know it's real. She said. We sat in silence for a while, and I realized something important. I didn't want Mara's apology anymore. I didn't need answers, and I definitely didn't need her regret. But the universe wasn't done with me, because 2 days later, I got a call from my lawyer. Routine check-in about finalizing the divorce paperwork. We were wrapping up the asset split, and everything had been straightforward so far until he paused. There's one thing, he said. Your ex-wife, ... She put in a late request. She wants to contest part of the agreement. What part? She's asking. For partial ownership of the property you're currently leasing. She claims you financed it with joint funds during the transition period after separation. I nearly dropped the phone. She wants a piece of my apartment. Technically, she's filing to establish a claim in case of future equity gain if it's purchased. It's unusual, but not unheard of. We'll fight it. I laughed, but it wasn't amused. She walked out, told me she was done, and now she's trying to retroactively stake a claim in my new life. It's weak, he said. She has no legal ground unless you let her. I didn't sleep much that night, not because of fear, but because of what it meant. She hadn't just come to see me out of curiosity. She was scouting, measuring, calculating. Had expected me to unravel after she left, but instead she saw I'd rebuilt. And now she wanted back in, not out of love or remorse, but because she hated the idea of being replaced. Well, she was too late. But the next move she made would shock even me and nearly undo everything. I had rebuilt. There's something unsettling about realizing that the person who once claimed to love you now wants to profit from your peace. I couldn't shake it. For days I kept turning it over in my head. Not just the legal maneuver Mara had pulled, but the psychology behind it. She had ended the marriage. She had packed her bags and disappeared into someone else's life. And yet, now that she saw I had landed on my feet, she wanted a piece of the ground I was standing on. I wasn't surprised she tried something, but this felt desperate, strategic. Like she couldn't stand the idea that I had managed to be happy without her. Rowan noticed the change in me before I said a word. I'd been quieter, more distracted, often, lost in my thoughts mid-sentence. One night, while we were cooking dinner together, she put the spatula down, leaned her hip against the counter, and asked softly, "Is she getting to you again?" I didn't lie, yeah, I said, but not the way she used to. It's not guilt anymore. It's this. Disbelief that after everything, she's still trying to claw at me like I owe her something. Rowan reached out, brushing a hand over my arm. Because you've healed in ways she never thought you would. She wasn't ready for that. I nodded, but my chest still felt tight. It wasn't about the apartment. I could fight that claim. I had a solid case. It was about the principle, about the audacity. Mara didn't want the place. She wanted to win. A little shard of control in a life she no longer had access to. My lawyer, Frank, was confident. She's bluffing, he said. She saw your name on a lease and got triggered. Give it time to drop it. But Mara didn't drop it. My apartment again. This time Rowan wasn't there. I was sorting through some books to donate when the doorbell rang. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. When I opened it, there she was. Same coat, same tote bag, same faint trace of her expensive perfume that used to give me comfort and now made my throat tighten. "Can we talk?" she asked. "I don't think there's anything left to say." She shifted on her feet. "I don't want things to end like this. You ended them. With 4 words. "I know," she said, stepping just inside the doorway. "I know what I did, but I'm allowed to change my mind." I stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. "You didn't lose a restaurant reservation, Mara. You walked out of a marriage." She looked around my apartment, at the couch Rowan had helped me pick out, at the framed pictures that didn't include her. "So this is where you've been hiding?" "I'm not hiding," I said. "Living." Mara took another step forward. "Do you ever think about what we had? what we built. I crossed my arms. I think about how I kept showing up and you kept checking out. I think about the nights I asked you if something was wrong and you told me I was imagining things. I think about the version of me you painted to everyone else. The clingy, weak husband who couldn't keep up with your ambition. Her eyes welled up, but I didn't buy it. Not anymore. I didn't come here to argue, she whispered. Came to ask. If there's still a chance for us. That stopped me cold. After everything, after Greg, after the photo, after the legal stunt, she wanted a second chance. Why? I asked. Because it didn't work out with him. Because I look okay now, and you're not? Or because you thought I'd be here crying into soup, and instead I built something you can't touch? Her silence was answer enough. I'm sorry, Mara, but you don't get to walk back in just because you didn't like what you found on the other side of the door you slammed. I loved you, she said, voice shaking. Maybe that was true, I replied. But the way you left me? That was true too, and I don't unsee that. She turned to leave, but just before she opened the door, she paused. She's not me, she said. No, I said softly. She listens. And then she was gone. That night Rowan returned, and I told her everything. She didn't react with jealousy or fear. She didn't ask me to cut Mara off or make ultimatums. She just said one thing as we sat on the couch in the dark. She's going to come back again. Nodded. I know. But you're not the same man she left. I looked at Rowan and realized she was right. And the next time Mara showed up, she wouldn't be walking into confusion or indecision. She'd be walking into a storm she'd no longer controlled. 4. The next 2 weeks, I didn't hear from Mara. No calls, no letters, no unannounced visits. It was like she had vanished again, but this time I didn't feel abandoned. I felt like the house had finally been rid of a long, low hum I'd gotten used to ignoring. I could think again. I could breathe again. Rohan and I fell into a rhythm. That felt natural, not perfect. Nothing ever is but steady. We laughed a lot, made stupid puns at the grocery store, took turns making each other playlists. She even dragged me to a pottery class where I spent more time apologizing to the clay than shaping it. Life was finally feeling like it belonged to me again. And then one morning, the storm came back. I was in the middle of a counseling session with one of my students, a 7th grader, struggling with anxiety, when the school receptionist knocked on my office door. She looked hesitant, almost pale. There's someone here asking for you. I told her it wasn't a good time, but she wouldn't leave. I already knew who it was. I asked my student to wait outside and stepped into the hallway. There was Mara, wearing her old brown coat, hair up in a bun, holding something in her hands. Not a folder, not an envelope, a small box. I didn't speak. She handed it to me, her hands trembling slightly. What is this? I asked, not opening it. She looked at me, eyes red but dry. Just ... please look. That's all I ask. Against my better judgment, I opened the box. Inside was a silver bracelet, a delicate, simple chain with a tiny blue charm, and a photograph underneath it, an ultrasound. I stared at it for a long time. Before my brain could even register what it was, I said aloud. She nodded. It's mine. I'm pregnant. The walls of the hallway seemed to close in around me. My throat tightened. I couldn't breathe, let alone speak. For the record, she added quickly, I'm not here to trap you. I'm not asking you for anything. Just thought you had the right. To know? Is it mine? I asked. My voice didn't even sound like mine. I don't know, she said. It could be yours or Greg's. I took a step back. So you're just dropping this on me now? At work, I've been scared, she said. Everything's falling apart. Greg cut me off. My apartment lease ends in 3 weeks. I made a mess of everything, and you thought maybe I can save you? No, she whispered, but I hoped you'd care. I didn't yell. I didn't slam the door. I just turned and walked away. The rest of that day was a blur. I finished work. I drove home. I told Rowan everything, not just about the box, but about the possibility. She sat very still, listening with more grace than I would have been capable of in her position. When I finished, I looked at her and said, I don't know if I believe her, but I don't know if I can afford not to. Rowan leaned back in her chair. You're not wrong. If it's yours, it changes a lot. I don't want it to, I said, but it would. I know. There was a long pause between us, and for a moment, I thought she might walk away, but she didn't. She reached over, took my hand, and said, whatever this turns out to be, you don't have to go through it alone, but you do need to find the truth. I did. I contacted my lawyer the next morning, told him everything. He said if she was pregnant and unsure of paternity, we had legal options proof, if necessary, before birth. I gave Mara the choice, a paternity test or nothing. No more emotional games, no more guessing. She didn't answer right away, but 3 days later she texted me one sentence. It's not yours. I stared at that message for so long my phone screen dimmed. I don't know if she ever thought it was. I think maybe it was just another door she tried to open. One more shot in the dark to see if I'd come crawling back, but I didn't. I showed Rowan the message. She read it, nodded, and then did. Something I didn't expect. She smiled. Good, she said. Now we can live without ghosts. And I believed her. But just when I thought the story had finally run out of surprises, something else arrived. A letter I was never meant to receive. And what it contained would reveal the final truth behind everything Mara had done. The envelope came on a rainy Tuesday. No name on the front, just my address, handwritten in shaky, looping cursive. I almost threw it out, assuming it was more fallout from Mara's last attempt to reinsert herself into my life. But something about the handwriting made me pause. It wasn't hers. I opened it slowly, half expecting another photo or another typed threat wrapped in guilt. Instead, it was a letter to full pages written in blue ink in a hand I hadn't seen in over 10 years. It was from Mara's mother. We hadn't spoken in ages, not since the early years of our marriage when Mara still invited her over for holidays. I remembered her as kind but cautious, always watching her daughter with a quiet tension, like she was afraid to say the wrong thing. The letter was raw, honest. She wrote about how she'd recently reconnected with Mara after months of silence. How Mara had confessed everything. The affair, the lies, the manipulation, even the fake pregnancy scare. How she'd admitted she didn't love Greg or me, or really anyone, not because she was cruel, but because she never learned how. She told me the letter read that she always admired your calm, that your steadiness terrified her because she knew she couldn't fake it forever. She said she left not because she didn't love you, but because she believed she couldn't be enough for someone who truly did. Her mother ended the letter with something I didn't expect. I know this doesn't undo anything, but I hope for what it's worth, you find peace. You didn't deserve the way it ended. I wish my daughter had been ready for the kind of love you offered. Folded the letter carefully and placed it in the drawer with the others. I didn't cry. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt light, like a knot that had been living quietly in my chest finally unraveled. That night, I cooked dinner for Rowan, an actual dinner, not just pasta or takeout. I put on music, lit candles, and asked her to sit while I served her plate. Laughed and asked if I was dying. No, I said. I'm finally living. She smiled, that real kind of smile that makes you want to memorize a moment. After dinner, we took a walk in the rain. No umbrellas, just two people soaked to the bone, laughing. Under dim streetlights like teenagers, without anywhere to be. I didn't tell her about the letter right away, but when I did, she held my hand tighter. You can let go now, she whispered, and I did. Months passed, then a year. The divorce paperwork gathered dust in a folder I never needed to open again. Never contacted me again. Greg moved states. Life, in its quiet way, moved forward. Rowan and I didn't rush anything. We just kept choosing each other in little ways every day. One afternoon, I looked across our kitchen and saw her sitting by the window, feet tucked under her, reading one of those mystery novels she always finished in 2 days. And in that moment, I realized something strange and beautiful. I no longer thought of Mara when I thought of love. I thought of this, of now, of calm, of home. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I wasn't waiting for the next